So the second section of this short session on dietary advice focuses on weight management. So this is for any service users who are struggling to manage their weight with overweight. So let's consider what we need to think about. Firstly, the question is our service user actually a healthy weight or not? And because so many people in the population are now overweight or obese, then our idea of what a healthy weight is often quite distorted. So we actually need to have something a little bit more objective as to whether someone is a healthy weight or not. And the usual way of us doing that is to calculate a body mass index, which may already have been done by other members of staff in the team. But just to give you an idea of how you would go about that and what it actually means. So a body mass index is a measure of weight in relation to height. And it needs to be a weight in kilograms and a height in meters squared. Now, there's lots of ways you can do this online. So you can go on and do body mass index calculators online. But if you're happier with a calculator, and then this is quite a simple calculation. So here's an example. If your service user weighs 78 kilograms and they're 1.6 meters tall, we're going to times 1.64 by itself, and then whatever we get, which is about 2.7, we're going to divide 78 by 2.7, and that leads us to a body mass index measure of 29 kilograms per meter squared. But what does that mean? So it's really important that we have as accurate as possible a measurement of height and weight, bearing in mind that most people's understanding of their height is inaccurate, and if possible, actual weights are going to make it much more usable measure. So what does it mean? So if we have a service user with a BMI of 18.5 or under 18.5, they are going to be underweight. So those are people that aren't certainly going to need weight management. They're going to need to be considered for nutritional support, which we'll come back to later. So between 18.5 and 24.9 is the healthy weight range. But some of the people at the lower end of that are going to perhaps appear to us as underweight. So we need to have that kind of measurement, particularly for people near the borders. Between 25 and 29.9 is overweight. So that's where that calculation we did, the 29, that person would be overweight. And 30 or over would be considered obese. And there are different levels of obesity within that. So 40 it would be morbid obese and so on. But those are the ones that we're really going to be thinking about. We don't want people to be on a weight management diet if they're in the healthy weight range or if they're underweight. So we need to be sure we've got our measurements right. However, we need to also be very mindful of the limitations of BMI. It is our most useful tool, but there are times when it doesn't work. So if, for example, your service user is an athlete or a rugby player, for example, somebody who's very muscular, muscle weighs more than fat. So those people are going to appear heavy, but actually the amount of fat they have in their body is going to be a lot less. So take a look at the person and think, right, is this an athlete? Is this a rugby player? Because the idea of the BMI isn't going to be very relevant for them. Different ethnic groups are at higher risk within the healthy range. So, for example, people of South Asian background, the healthy weight range is shifted across to slightly lower for them. So the top of healthy for them is about 23. So there are different measurements, different levels or ranges that we use for people of South Asian background and also people of African Caribbean backgrounds as well. So have a look at your service user and think about, what's relevant for them. We also know that shape affects health risks. So people who are apples, as in round, got bigger tummies, but not necessarily bigger limbs, so where all the weight is on the tummy, those are going to be at higher health risk. Those people who are more pear-shaped, so narrowed, perhaps narrow waist but bigger hips, those are going to be at a lower risk than people who are apple-shaped. So apples and pears is quite important. So for those people who are definitely apple-shaped, waist circumference is another measure that some people may use. Fairly obviously, I think if someone's pregnant, waist circumference isn't going to be the issue, but also we expect a level of weight gain. So it's quite difficult unless it's very early on to get a BMI that is relevant to a pregnant woman. Children have different measures, and older people, because they, in opposite to athletes, tend to have a lower muscle mass, and therefore they tend to weigh less in effect for their overall size. So when for people who are frail, elderly, BMI isn't really the best measure. And the other people to think about are those who may have edema. So they've got fluid, puffy ankles or ascites around their tummy due to liver disease or something like that. So if people are suffering from edema, extra fluid on board, then BMI isn't going to be a terribly good measure. The other thing to really consider is, where is this people going on their weight trend? Are they stable? Are they losing weight? Or are they gaining weight? If they're gaining weight, we definitely would want to be supporting them to not do that, assuming they're overweight or obese. If they're stable, that's great. That's a starting point to work on. But do remember that some people who are overweight or obese may still be losing weight. So they might not be well nourished, even if they're still overweight, because they may have lost a lot of weight. And sometimes they get missed because they are losing weight but still overweight, and people are aren't concerned about nutritional support. So do ask about the weight history over the last few months. What's happening with their weight? Is it going up? Is it stable? Is it going down? So it's really important that we consider that as well. So let's think of those people who are overweight or obese, and where we might start with supporting them for weight management. And many of us have tried a weight management journey at different parts of our lives, and most of us will realize it's not easy. So we need to ask ourselves the question, and ask the service user, are they actually ready to make any kind of start on a weight loss journey? That's a really important question, because if they're completely not, we're not going to get far. We're just going to build up a barrier to them progressing. If they are feeling ready for a weight loss journey, then they're going to need some goals and action plans and ways to monitor progress. People who monitor their progress are much more likely to succeed. And we're not just talking about monitoring their actual weight, we're talking about monitoring positive changes, positive lifestyle changes. So for example, if they decided, right, well, normally I have a takeaway 2 or 3 times a week, but I'm going to limit it to 1 day a week. Have they done that when they come back in a month? Have they actually managed to meet that goal? So progress isn't just about weight, it is about changes to lifestyle. It might be about physical activity, it might be about dietary change. So we want people to be following a healthy diet, not a fad diet. So go back to your Eat Well guide and make sure that whatever they are considering is going to fit with that. And sometimes people just getting their dietary intake more in line with the Eat Well guide can be enough to help them lose weight. But other things we need to consider, so some top tips here: reduce portion sizes whenever possible, but not of vegetables. So we're changing that balance and having plates for a main meal, for example, half filled with vegetables or salad. Ideally, you want people having regular balanced meals, 3 meals a day. Missing breakfast is not a good thing to be doing. People tend to eat more over the day if they miss breakfast. Be mindful of foods high in fat and added sugar. So you remember with the Eat Well guide, these are things that aren't essential. So these need to be limited. These are the ideal foods to cut out. But of course, if you cut them out completely, we tend to encourage people to crave those things. So what can they feel comfortable cutting out, cutting down? One of the other things that has a really good evidence base is making sure that people eat in a mindful way. So they're not working, sitting by the computer, watching TV. So they're actually concentrating on their eating. And this tends to help people become more aware of their intake and when they're getting full. So focusing on the eating, enjoying the food, eating slowly, all of those things can help people just become more aware of that eating. If people consume alcohol, moderating their intake, certainly within the safe recommended levels, is really important, but also it's a big source of calories, of energy for people, and energy that's providing nothing useful, just energy. So that's often a good thing for people to cut down. Encourage more activity in line with the recommendations, but also bearing in mind what, if you've got a person who's rehabilitating, they're going to, be limited perhaps in what they can do. And one of the most important things is that people get support. That might be from family and friends, it might be from you. If you look in the resource section at the end of this presentation, there's a whole list of food fact sheets which are really helpful for people with weight management. There's also the NHS weight management plan. And some people may want to join weight management groups in the community, which is fine if they want to do that. So these are just a few starting points to think about with weight management. But key question, is that person ready to consider it?